Hello friends. So a little while back over on my Instagram stories, I asked all of you, what are some well-loved and popular science fiction and fantasy tropes that you actually dislike, hate, can't stand? I wanted to specifically frame the question this way because we talk about tropes we hate all the time, and we end up seeing a lot of the same ones. So I was curious which ones typically people absolutely adore that you're like, no, I don't like that one. Some of the ones that you mentioned, I was so surprised because of course there's going to be ones that most of us like and they're not universally loved, but I was still really surprised by some of the ones that you mentioned. Before jumping into it, a big thank you to GlassesUSA.com for working with me on today's video. I'm always wearing glasses from Glasses USA. I'll have this particular pair that you see all the time linked. And in general, they're just awesome because you can take the middleman out of the equation. You have so many different styles to pick from. You can scan your glasses if you've forgotten your prescription. You can get blue light blocking lenses. You can get prescription or non-prescription glasses and sunglasses. And then of course, it's more affordable. And there's the try-on feature online, so you don't have to go out of your home. They deliver it right to your house. I'll have this pair as well as some others linked in the description bar down below, but now jumping back into the video. I'm going to start with the one that I personally found to be the most surprising. I can't believe that somebody wouldn't like this in a book, and that's Animal Companion. I love animal companions in books, and they did specify that they do like real animals. So that even confuses me more because I could understand if you're like, ugh, I don't get it because I don't even get why people love animals anyway, because there are people like that. I don't understand it, but there are people that are like, no, slobber, or ugh, it's hair, or you're allergic to animals and you've never had the opportunity to have one and love one, and you know, I get that. That's very different. But as far as there are just some people that are like, ugh, about animals. There's all sorts of reasons why people don't like animals. I don't get it, but, you know, everybody's different. But if you like animals, but then you don't like them in books, I am just surprised by that. I'm surprised. Is it the sad, unfortunate part about Instagram stories is that it's not like people can explain themselves, which does make for fun, I guess, reactions, because then I'm sitting here trying to figure out like, but how? And for this one, maybe it's the way that it's done, because there are times the way it's done is they really up the cute factor of the animal. If it's a talking animal or a talking mythological creature or something, then they just end up being kind of the same from book to book, or the relationship between that companion and the human, because that's likely usually what it is. It's just very maybe cheesy or cliche and gets to be the same. Maybe that's what it is, unless you truly are like, no, I've never liked an animal companion. Get them out of books. I just want humans. I don't know. But as somebody who's like, yay, there's a doggy in this book, or yay, a dragon, I just am very surprised. Next one, I was surprised how much this one came up, and I do think I can figure out why some people just really don't like it, and that's enemies to lovers. I think a lot of times what draws us into the enemies to lovers is the just natural tension of two people on opposing sides, two people with different viewpoints, or two people with just personalities that are constantly going head to head. And what can be very exciting about that is you're like, when is the turning point? When's that moment when they finally see each other for who they are? They're finally starting to understand. Or maybe what's exciting is by having this person challenge you, it makes you then be introspective and reflect, and you grow. And the same can be said for the other character. And so it sort of facilitates character growth. It forces the characters to see beyond themselves, which is why people often, I think, like it. And again, just the tension of it. But I also can see where there are certain times enemies to lovers can be very unrealistic, or even if it's a fictional setting, can be very uncomfortable, because there are instances where one character maybe holds a certain status and they use their privilege, they use their power to oppress another character, or maybe there's somebody who is extremely ignorant and they just can't understand why this other character should have equality, or why they should have, just in general, be valued as a person. And those kinds of enemies to lovers can be, at some point you're like, why would you ever like this guy? Or why would you ever like this girl? Why would you ever like this person? Why would you like them? Because they seem like a tool bag. Now, if it's not that situation, and it truly is the other thing I described, then I'm confused. I'm just going to be confused about, I feel like, a fair amount when it's done well. Because that's the thing with every trope, is usually there are ones we hate, but there are exceptions. And if you found a book where enemies to lovers is executed really well, but you're like, yeah, I just hate it though, I always hate it, I guess that's just, there's something for everybody, and that's not one of the things for you. The next two go hand in hand, and it was funny seeing both of these things mentioned. One of them was complicated magic systems, and then the other one was soft magic systems. With soft magic systems, I think most of us know why some people really dislike them, and that's because the magic can be used as such a plot convenience. And there are ways to go about doing soft magic where it doesn't solve all of the problems as those problems arise. So soft magic systems, a lot of times you'll find them in fairy tale-like stories, and you'll find them in fae type of stories. You find them maybe in folklore and myth and legend, where there's just some kind of magical thing that's not really explained. And I don't think most of us have a problem with it if, let's say there's a character who is human and they're interacting with the fae, and the fae are having glamours or something like that. Like, to pause and be like, how are they having that glamour? Did they have to ingest something? Did they get it from this certain kind of plant? Like, you don't really need to dive deeper. It's just kind of like, that's just how it is. But if a character is dying and then all of a sudden there's just this high stakes moment, which is solved by this magic that's never been introduced before, that's when I think a lot of us get very frustrated, because it takes all tension out of the story. It makes it feel like, okay, anytime a bad thing happens, I'm expecting the magic to come save the day, and if magic saved the day earlier, but it doesn't save the day now, and then you introduce some rule as to why the magic can't save it now, it just feels like you're doing things to serve the plot constantly, as opposed to establishing at least a little bit something to explain why or why not. And then there's, with complicated magic, the reason I think a lot of us maybe will shy away from it at times is when it becomes so complicated that you just can't follow, or there's so many rules that the rules feel like they start to contradict themselves. Or in the case of something like Mistborn, where a lot of people love the magic system, for some people it just starts to feel like a video game. It feels like they're getting a tutorial and they're being told, like, to use this particular metal, press triangle, or something like that. And I get why both can be frustrating. And this is just one where, and I could be completely wrong here, but I think for the most part, complicated magic systems can be off-putting to fantasy beginners. And soft magic systems, I think when you have started to really get these almost science-based or logic-based magic systems, or you get these magic systems with these rules and limitations very well established, the soft magic system can just maybe not feel as intricate with its execution. This one just makes sense. I understand why people wouldn't like one or wouldn't like the other, but they still make way more sense to me than the Animal Companions one. Ugh. I want to add as well, with the complicated magic system, what some people don't like about it is that it takes the feeling of something being magical out of the equation. And they want that sense of mystery, that sense of awe, and they feel like you rob them of that if you just break it down so much. But in general, I can completely understand why some people gravitate to one kind of magic system in a book over the other. There are so many more loved tropes that some of you really don't like that I could go through, but I'm just going to stick with one more for today. If you'd like me to do more of these, I would happily do so, because some of these I was really surprised by, but we're going to stick with just this one more for today, and that would be the one bed trope. So I think most of you know, I don't think I really need to explain, but just in case, it's when characters, like they're traveling or something, and they get to an inn, and they get in the room, and they realize there's only one bed. And then they're like, it's fine, it's big enough for the both of us. Or like, there's like a little mini argument of like, you take it, no, you take it. And those moments, because, you're like, they're going to end up in the bed, right? They're both going to end up in the bed, and then they're going to be like, oh my gosh. Maybe in the morning they wake up and they're like, they got a lot closer or whatever. There's going to be something where they're forced to be close together. And I think this is fun, whether it's enemies to lovers or it's a romantic tension has been building the whole time in a, I guess you could say, positive way, not enemies to lovers. The one bed trope fits both, because if they're enemies, like maybe it's more that they don't get along and their personalities clash. So if they're like that and they come into this room, they're like, ugh, and they have to get close to each other, then it can be funny because it's like, can you like stop hogging the blanket or whatever, right? You can have that moment, but then like maybe it's cold and like they have to snuggle. And then you have the one where it's been building and they've been avoiding talking about it, or maybe they know how they feel but they don't think the other person feels that way, and then that person, you know, that person does feel that way for them, and so when they get in the bed, you're like, I know you guys want to snuggle, but you feel like you can't because you're scared. And then it sets up something most people really love, these kind of slightly awkward, uncomfortable moments, except for like you're living for it. So I think the reason though that people don't always love it is that it's a cliche at this point, or it can be. Every trope can be executed well. It's when it gets to be a little tired, a little unoriginal, where it plays out the exact same way we've seen before. When that happens, then I think that's where a lot of us don't care for it. And there was an instance where I read a book. It wasn't so much a one bed as it was more like they had to, I think it was almost like they had to share a sleeping bag or a tent or something like that. So the characters had to be close together because it was freezing outside. And then, of course, that was exactly when the love interest of one character came. They saw them, and then they're like, if you actually love him, then... Huh. And I was like... And that was forcing there to be an issue when there really didn't need to be one. And that was frustrating. And that's not the only time that the one-bed trope can be done in a way that is not necessarily fun anymore. I would love to know of some more tropes that are absolutely adored generally in science fiction fantasy that you personally can't stand. If you are one of the people that you're in agreement with the tropes that were mentioned here, I would love to know your reasoning behind why you personally don't care for them. If you're like, how can somebody not like this trope? I would love to see those reactions too. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.